I was always so close to my daughter growing up. But my wife, on the other hand, she just could never accept me as we grew apart through our stages of marriage because apparently I wasn't making enough money. I was a mechanic, and her fine taste for all the good things in life I couldn't afford on my salary. Well, I didn't think my daughter would take her footsteps years later, guys. Here's what's happening. My wife, she left me. She went after some rich dude. But I thought me and my daughter had a bond. Oh no, she went with her mom, and now I'm not allowed to go to my own daughter's wedding because apparently, word for word, she said this. She doesn't want me there because I'm just a mechanic, and she doesn't want people like that at her grand wedding. Can you believe this? Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just crash it. Lately, I've been feeling stuck in a strange mix of emotions, and I don't know what else to turn to. A part of me wonders if sharing this here will make sense or just give me a bit of clarity. You know, just to give you some context, I'm a father in my 50s. I used to take pride in the simplicity of life. It wasn't really grand, it wasn't really glamorous, but it was mine. It was me being a mechanic, a craftsman of sorts. It was work that gave me a purpose. Something I could stand behind, and I was darn proud of it. I was not rich, but I was content. Then I met Claire. At the time, I was young and naive, but full of kinds of ambition that made me believe that I could conquer the world. She was everything I thought I needed. Beauty, intelligent, and with an intensity about her that I could not quite place, but found irresistible. I thought we were perfect for each other, and then we had Emily. Our daughter, and everything seemed even more perfect. Our little family, it wasn't much, but it was ours. I worked harder than I had ever worked before. I wanted to give them everything I never had, everything I dreamt that we could have. I put in hours, day after day, night after night, till my bones ached, and for a while that wasn't enough. Well, Claire, Emily, and I, we were content. The house wasn't fancy, we did not take lavish vacations, but we had each other, and we had love. Yeah, no, that's enough, or so I thought. But Claire, she was different. No matter how hard I worked, it was never enough for her. She always wanted more money, more luxury cars, that life that screamed success. And no matter how many hours I spent in the garage, no matter how many jobs I took to make ends meet, it was never enough for Claire. It was not about love, it wasn't about our life together, it was about something bigger, something more that I could never provide. I'll never forget the time she casually said I would never be able to give Emily the life she deserved. Well, that one stung. I brushed it off, and I kept working, and I kept pushing. But the cracks started to show, and the little digs turned into big criticism. She compared me to her friend's husband, men with money, men who could afford to send kids to private schools, who took their families on overseas vacations, husbands who gave their wives luxurious gifts, and every time she made one of those comparisons, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I was working harder than I had ever worked in my life, but it was never enough. No matter how many hours I spent in the garage, no matter how many side jobs I picked up, I could never satisfy her hunger. It wasn't just the money she wanted, it was the lifestyle, the life that I could not give her. Slowly, I watched her pull away from me, and at first it was subtle, less affection, less appreciation, but then it grew. She started spending more time with her friends, the ones who had money, who looked down on people like me, and our home, once warm and full of laughter, began to feel cold. Tense. I could see the distance between us growing, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not close the gap. And then came Richard. I'll never forget the day I met him. He was older than me, taller, and exuded an air of confidence that I could never hope to match. He was everything I wasn't, wealthy, successful, polished, and when Claire introduced him to me as a friend, I could see the way that she looked at him. It was a look I could not ignore, a look I could not compete with. Richard had everything she had ever wanted. It wasn't long before Claire filed for divorce, and she claimed it was irreconcilable differences. But we both knew the truth. She was leaving me for Richard, for the life that he could give her, the life that I could not. But it wasn't just Claire that I lost, it was Emily, our daughter. I fought to keep her, in touch with her. I did everything I could to remain a part of her life. I texted, I wrote letters, but Claire, She was already poisoning her mind, and she told Emily that I was not good enough. That I was not a real father because I did not have the thing that Claire thought she needed. Slowly, Emily began to pull away. She stopped visiting, she stopped calling, and every time I tried to reach out, Claire had an excuse. "She's busy. She doesn't want to see you right now." I tried everything, but it did not matter. The distance grew, and I watched helplessly as my daughter slipped further away from me. And eventually Emily stopped pretending, and she stopped pretending that she cared. It felt like I was being erased from their lives. Claire, she had everything now, the mansion, the wealth, the life that she always wanted, and Emily, the little girl, who used to love me, had grown into somebody who looked at me with contempt, as though I was the one who had failed her. I don't know how it had happened, but one day she was my bright-eyed daughter, and the next she was a stranger, who had learned to be ashamed of me just like that. Well, the years, they passed, and I just kept quiet. I lived my life, but I never stopped caring about Emily, and somewhere deep down I held on to the hope that maybe one day she would see through the lies that Claire and I wove. Maybe, just maybe, she would remember the man that I had been to her, the man who had done anything to make her happy and loved with all his heart. But as the years wore on, as the silence stretched between us, I began to wonder if that day would ever come. Every morning I wake, it's like a new kind of loneliness. I get in my truck, go to work, fix cars, fix broken things, but nothing can fix the emptiness in me. The hole that Claire and Emily left in my life is one I can't repair. I look at the old photos we took when things were simpler, when Emily would run to me with open arms, when her smile would simply light up my world. I remember the laughter, the way that she would hold my hand and tell me she loved me like nothing could tear us apart. But now all I have is memories, and no matter how much I try to fill the space with work or distraction, it's always there. Then a few days ago, Claire showed up unannounced at my door. I was stunned to see her after all this time, and for a fleeting moment I thought she might have news about Emily wanting to reconnect. But the hope was quickly crushed when Claire told me that Emily was getting married to Mark, her childhood sweetheart. At first I felt a surge of joy. Emily deserves happiness, and Mark always seemed like a good man. But then Claire threw the real reason for her visit, and I was not invited to the wedding. According to her, my presence would, quote, embarrass Emily and ruin her special day. In Claire's words, I'm still just a mechanic, and that's not the image Emily wants at her wedding. Hearing those words broke something in me. All those years I've held on to hope that Emily would remember the father who loved her unconditionally, but now it feels like I was fooling myself. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to show up anyways, to fight for the chance to be there for my daughter on one of the most important days of her life, but another part wonders if that would just make things worse. I tried to stay calm, tried to hold my ground, and I reminded Claire that I'm still Emily's father, and I want to be there for her. But Claire didn't even blink. She mocked me, asking what I could possibly contribute that would, do this grand event for her. I can't afford the wedding she thinks Emily deserves, and apparently that's all that matters now. Well, I ignored the jab. I just wanted to be a part of her life, to be there on her special day. I asked Claire how I could help and what I could do to be involved, and Claire, always with that calculating look, suggested that I could help with the wedding expenses. She threw in the fact that Emily was struggling with some bills. Like it was some noble cause, it wasn't about helping Emily. It was about exploiting my desperation, my longing to fix the mess that's been made of my relationship with her. I should have known better, but in that moment I was so blinded by guilt and hope. I agreed to help, and I told Claire to send me the details, and I'd figure it out. She left with that smug look upon her face, as if she had won. Before she left, she threw in one last insult, telling me not to embarrass Emily because apparently Emily had worked hard to rise above, quote, all this, as if I was the problem. Just after that, something else happened. I was at the florist delivering a van load of arrangements when I saw Emily, Mark, and a few of her high society friends picking out flowers for the wedding. My heart skipped a beat when Emily noticed me, but instead of acknowledging me, she turned her back on me, pretending that she did not see me. I felt like I was invisible. My chest was tightening, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was completely out of her life. I saw Mark try to make an effort, but Emily shut him down, coldly telling him to focus on the wedding. I stood there, a stranger to my daughter, and it's clear now. Claire has done her job. She's turned Emily against me. She's erased me from her life, and I don't know if I can ever fix it. And this is why I'm more desperate than ever to reconnect with Emily. For the last few days, I've been buying myself into work. I took on extra shifts, literally burying myself in nothing but side jobs, trying to scrape together a bit of money, Claire had hinted out. Every late night, every exhausting hour reminded me why I worked so hard in the first place. To give Emily the life that I thought she deserved. But nothing, well, it just didn't feel right. I started to question whether Emily was even struggling with the wedding cost or if this was just another one of her manipulation tactics. If Emily did not want me there, why didn't she just say it herself? Say it, you know? Then last night I get a text from Claire. She reminded me about the venue's bill, but the amount she mentioned was far more than what she would have told me before. I'm being asked to cover the whole deposit. Well, why? Claire and Richard have money, so why am I expecting to foot the bill? Something just doesn't add up. Is Emily even aware of this, or is Claire just using my desperation to reconnect with her as leverage? I don't know what to do next. Should I confront Claire? Should I try reaching out to Emily directly, or am I just lost in this mess? I'm not sure how to handle this, guys. Any advice? Update number 1. Hey, I know it's been a month since my last update, but a lot has happened in the past few weeks, and I'm honestly feeling a bit overwhelmed. The wedding is drawing closer, and things have been escalating in ways I did not expect. I'll try to keep it short, but I have to vent. First off, that moment at the florist with Emily and Mark. Yeah, it's been bothering me ever since, and it wasn't that I was expecting anything grand, but the coldness in Emily's eyes was something I was not prepared for. I kept hoping she'd remember what we had, but it feels like I've been replaced by all these other people. By the image of what Claire wants, what she needs, and that brings me to Claire. She's running the show for this wedding, and let me tell you, it's all about her. I honestly don't recognize that woman anymore. She's obsessed with making this wedding as over-the-top as possible, pushing Emily's wants and needs aside. All she's concerned about is grandeur, designer, dresses, a massive venue, extravagant flowers, you name it. Mark, who's been such a calming force in Emily's life, hates every bit of it. He's not the kind of guy who wants to flaunt wealth, he just wants something simple. Something that reflects their love, but Claire. She's bulldozing through every decision, and I can see it's wearing on Mark. The tension between Emily and Mark has been impossible to ignore. And to be honest, Emily seems to be pulling further away from everyone, including Mark. I overheard Mark quietly telling Emily that it was not right for her to have Richard, her stepfather, just walk her down the aisle, and he's right, it should be me. Well, how do I know all this? Well, I've been working behind the scenes at some of the events leading up to Emily's wedding, trying to make ends meet while also covering the so-called expenses. Claire keeps demanding an Emily's name. I've been trying to stay low-key while keeping myself out of the spotlight, but it's clear I'm being erased from the picture entirely, and there's little that I can do about it. While running one of these errands, I happened to witness an argument between Claire and Richard. He was visibly frustrated, accusing her of extravagant spending and even threatening to cut off her access to the accounts after she didn't learn her lesson when he limited the allowance. That's when I knew Claire was up to something. She was trying so hard to maintain her super high society image, and it was clearly creating cracks in the marriage and pushing Emily and Mark further apart. Of course, Claire would never admit fault. When Mark raised concerns about the wedding becoming all about appearances, she dismissed him cruelly. She told him he needed to, quote, act sophisticated and stop associating with people beneath him. It stung to see him take that insult, but that's Claire in a nutshell. Manipulation, ruthless, and willing to trample over anyone to keep up her facade. She doesn't care about anything real, only about the facade that she's built. It sickens me. How is she messing with my daughter's wedding for her own selfish need to stay on top? How far is she willing to push before it all falls apart? Update number 2. Hey guys, I'm back to update what happened after, and this journey has been a roller coaster of emotions, and I'm here to share what happened on the day of Emily's wedding. First of all, I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Emily's wedding. She made it crystal clear. Yeah, Claire and Emily did not want me there, and I reluctantly accepted my exclusion, but fate had other plans. A regular client asked me to deliver their car to a venue that turned out to be the venue of Emily's wedding venue. I froze when I realized where I was. My heart raced as I parked the vehicle and saw the grand decorations and bustling staff. The guests arriving in their finest attire, and this was the day my daughter was getting married. I wasn't even supposed to see it. I decided to stay out of the pictures, just observing, but it did not take long to notice something was wrong. The florist arguing with Claire, yelling about unreasonable last-minute changes. The caterer was nowhere to be found. Later, I learned they had not been paid their deposit. Guests were starting to whisper, and glancing at their watches as if it was delayed, stretching into the hours. And then I saw her, my daughter. Emily was sitting on a bench near the venue entrance with her hands trembling as she clutched her fiancé. It was Mark's arm. She was in tears, her face a mess of stress and frustration, and I wanted to walk away. I thought she didn't want me here. What good can I do? But Mark must have noticed me lingering nearby, and he just leaned down, whispered something straight to Emily, and pointed in my direction. Her head snapped up, and she saw me, and for a moment, time felt like it stopped because our eyes met, and I could not read her expression. Shock, regret, maybe even relief? It was nothing more than a whirlwind of emotions I could not untangle. And, well, after what felt like an eternity, she hesitated but then got up and walked right towards me. Just like that, and when she finally spoke, her voice was so soft it almost broke me. She asked for help, addressing me as her father, as if years of distance and silence could be bridged in a single moment. Guys, all the pain and anger I'd carried melted away in the moment. I couldn't say no to my daughter, not today, not on this day. Mark and I took charge, tackling crisis after crisis. Emily's stepfather was hardly off any use, and sidestepped since I stepped into the image. Mark and I together fixed the caterer's delay with simpler options, reworked the missing flowers using the venue's garden, and personally retrieved the bridal gown. Claire's impossible demands for vendors refusing to work, leaving guests confused. With effort, we salvaged the day. The result was not really Claire's some extravagant vision that she had, but a heartfelt ceremony under twinkling lights focused on love rather than luxury. For a brief moment, guys, everything just felt right. But then, as the ceremony ended and guests started to mingle, Claire made her move, and the peace shattered once more. She sneered, her voice dripping with mockery, calling me a grease. Loud enough to draw attention, I clenched my fist but kept quiet. I'd already swallowed more than my fair share of humiliation before, but Claire did it wrong, making a blunder with my daughter's wedding. And she didn't even stop there. She kept going, turning my willingness to help into the punchline of her twisted joke. Her words were not just cruel, they were meant to demean me in front of everyone, so I bit my tongue, but the words stung. What pushed me over the edge was not just the insult, it was the laughter from the guest who thought it was funny, who joined in at her expense, and she had publicly humiliated me in front of my daughter, and I had taken it for far too long. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder containing the stack of unpaid invoices that I received while clearing the mess Claire created, and threw it right in her face. I revealed how, instead of using the wedding budget for Emily's special day, guys, she just straight up blew it on spa days and designer outfits and lavish dinners to maintain her image. Meanwhile, Emily's happiness was left in ruins. The room was awfully silent. Guests, who had been laughing just moments before, now looked around unsure of what to do. Claire's face was starting to drain of color. Her smile was faltering as she tried to find a way to deny it, but I confronted Claire about the money she claimed was for Emily's wedding, only to realize it was nothing more than a lie. I've been used again, and I don't know what to do. Claire stumbled over her words, trying to explain, trying to justify, and she claimed it was for Emily, that she had done it all with the best of intentions, but Emily was not having any of it. The anger, the frustration in her voice, it was like years of bottled up resentment spilling out. She saw through the excuses, through the selfishness, and she called Claire out for what she truly was. A woman who had used everyone around her to get what she wanted, no matter the cost. Even Richard, her wealthy husband, was visibly disgusted. He looked at Claire with icy contempt, and he did not try to shield her or smooth things over. Instead, he made it clear that he was not going to bail her out this time. He wasn't going to fix what she had broken, and with that, he turned on his heels and walked out, leaving Claire standing there speechless, humiliated, in front of everybody, all the people she tried to impress. And after everything, Emily came to me with a tear in her eye, apologizing for believing her mother's lies all these years and treating me so poorly. She was choking on her emotions, and it hit me hard. I didn't know how to react at first, but I pulled her close. I'd been waiting for this moment for years, and I told her I forgave her and wanted to move forward. Then Mark, who had stood by me, thanked me for saving their wedding, and he was grateful and addressed me as their savior. In the weeks following the wedding, Claire's life unraveled. Richard had left, and when he refused to pay the mounting bills, Claire found herself drowning in debt. Her elite social circle, the one that she'd been so eager to impress, turned their backs on her gossip, spreading like wildfire, and she became a pariah, isolated from everyone she tried to impress. As for Emily and me, we began rebuilding our relationship, and she and Mark moved forward in their lives, focusing on love and honesty, something Claire had never understood. Slowly, the distance between us started to close, and I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could finally have the family we deserved. Anyways, that's it. But tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes?